Good morning, dear participants. On behalf of Maharashtra Education Society Pune and MES Ayurved Mahavidyalay, myself Dr. Shreyas Joshi welcome all the participants to the first day of national webinar on changing trends in Ayurveda due to impact of COVID-19. I request our respected principal Dr. Shyam Bhakre sir for keynote address.
Good morning, everyone. As all of you are very well aware that COVID-19 pandemic impacted the whole world. It has changed every single occupation, and same is with Ayurvedic practice. This pandemic is still continuing and we don't know exactly when it will end. We all need to adjust this new and changing situation. Considering the changing trends, we find it important to strengthen Ayurvedic practitioners by boosting them with the help of lectures of these eminent speakers. We used to say that prevention is better than cure, but COVID-19 have proved that prevention is not just better, but the best option, especially when there is no cure. Our speaker, Dr. B.S. Prasad, will emphasize this role of Ayurveda for prevention from the disease. Ayurveda has tremendous potential not just in prevention but also in curative part of COVID positive cases. Dr. Kiran Pandit will give us guidance on topic perspective management of COVID-19. Panchakarma is an integral part of Ayurvedic practice. This pandemic have impacted especially when we take into consideration safety of patients, consultants and all our staff. Dr. Nachiket Vachasundar will guide us about what safety measures are to be implemented during Panchakarma procedures henceforth. We hope to see all of you in this 3 days webinar series and also assure you that the mentors will guide you to boost your confidence in Ayurvedic practice. On behalf of Maharashtra Education Society, Pune and MES Ayurved Mahavidyalay, I welcome all the 3 resource persons and request dear participants to join as much as possible to collect the intellectual nectar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With your permission, I go forward in introducing our very first speaker, Dr. Kiran Dattatray Pandit. Dr. Kiran Pandit sir is a highly proficient clinician running a Guru Krupa hospital at Thane West. He has completed his undergraduation from KG Mittal Punarvasu Ayurved Mahavidyalay in 1995, completed diploma in herbal drugs manufacturing and management in 2001, completed postgraduate diploma in emergency medical services from Hinduja Hospital, Mumbai. Sir also a postgraduate in Swasthvrutta and Yoga and currently pursuing PhD at DY Patil University, Nehru. Sir has attended several conferences and presented papers as well as posters. Sir also received specialized training in first aid, disaster management, etc. Dr. Kiran Pandit has been a visiting faculty to Reserve Bank of India, Marine Academy for health related topics. Sir has conducted more than 400 trainings across India and also conducted more than 350 medical camps across Maharashtra. Sir has pioneered first mobile medical unit for slum dwellers in Mumbai with integrated approach. Sir has been felicitated by Ministry of Ayush for the contribution in the field of Ayurveda and Medical Excellence Award by International Business Council for contribution in the field of healthcare and vocational education at New Delhi. Currently, Dr. Kiran Pandit is a member of Maharashtra Council of Indian Medicine and also assessor of NABH for Ayush stream. Sir, we are thrilled to have you as a resource person for our webinar. You are such a learned and dynamic personality of Ayurveda. I request Dr. Kiran Pandit sir to start with today's session. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I welcome all the respected colleagues to the National Webinar Series on Changing Trends in Ayurveda Practices due to the impact of COVID-19, organized by NES Ayurveda Mahavidyalaya, Lotus. My topic is Perspective Management of COVID-19. Before I start my session, I bow down with folded hands with respect to Lord Dhanvantari and all my revered gurus from whom I am still learning something new every day. A mark of gratitude to all the doctors working 24/7 in this difficult situation. A tribute to all the doctors, martyrs who laid their lives serving society so far. As I speak today for this session, we must understand that we lost close to more than 180 doctors in this fight against COVID. We also need to remind ourselves about the responsibility that we have towards Ayurveda, and finally being committed towards evidence-based practice. We all would agree that COVID-19 pandemic has completely changed the healthcare scenario. But we need to understand and introspect how have we reacted or responded to COVID so far. We also need to know how can we keep ourselves prepared for such further onslaught of new epidemics. And finally, what is the key to good health? While going through the literature review and the past history of epidemics, I was amazed to see that mankind has seen close to 20 epidemics so far, out of which 11 epidemics in the past 19th century and 9 epidemics in the past 1 century. So, when I went through all the data, the initial epidemics causes were more of bacterial infections, plague, cholera, yellow fever, etc. But now in the past 100 years, we've seen close to 9 epidemics of global proportions with more of viral manifestations like H1N1, HIV, MERS, SARS, Ebola, etc. I've listed down the names of the pandemics known to mankind from the year 165, whether it was the Antonian plague, the plague of Justinian, the Japanese smallpox epidemic, the Black Death, Italian plague, cholera pandemic. This list is exhaustive. It has the name of the pandemic, number of deaths that were caused because of this pandemic, the causative organism or the microorganism, the location, geographical location, whether it was the Roman Empire, Japan, Europe, Italy, or China in Wuhan or Russia or USA, spread by whom, and the world population at that time. Here you can see almost 11 pandemics in the past 19 centuries, and this slide shows you the 9 pandemics that we have seen in this past 1 century. Whether it was the Spanish flu, Asian flu, the Hong Kong flu, the HIV/AIDS, which was detected in as early as 1981. We lost more than 35 million people to this virus, but still we have not been able to discover a drug, neither a vaccine for prevention of HIV/AIDS. If you look at from the year 2000, we've seen SARS, swine flu, Ebola, MERS, and now COVID-19. So these are most of the pandemics that we have seen in the past 20 centuries. We all know that the origin of the novel coronavirus was initially noticed in the seafood market in Wuhan of China somewhere in the mid of December 2019, and alarmingly it has now spread to more than 215 countries or areas worldwide. The World Health Organization declared this as a public health emergency of international concern on 30th January 2020. and subsequently declared COVID a pandemic on 11th of March 2020. This is the slide which I have taken from the website Worldometer. It is a very fantastic site which gives us all the updated information of anything that you want below the sun. This is the list of the top 15 countries and the number of cases that have been detected so far. You can see that India ranks third among this list of the top 15. Or you may say India ranks third among the total 215 countries affected worldwide. On the 1st of August, we had close to 17,50,000 cases with an average increase of 50 to 54,000 cases per day. We lost more than 37,000 plus people in the fight against COVID. USA, which is leading, has close to 47 lakh cases with a death toll of 1,57,000 plus cases. And worldwide, COVID has till now affected 1,80 lakh individuals. And the death is close to 7 lakh as of now. So we can know the severity of the COVID, the spread, the contagion, which is an important factor. The case fatality rate of COVID is somewhere between 1.5 to 2.5 and between 2 to 3 in certain countries. The novel coronavirus, as it is called novel because not much was known to anyone. There is no established medicine or vaccine yet for the management of COVID. New information and knowledge is evolving daily worldwide. There are close to more than 100 core research teams which are working for developing a medicine, a drug or a vaccine for COVID worldwide. The latest guidelines are being issued by the World Health Organization, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India, ICMR, Ministry of Ayush and the various task forces which have been constituted by the central ministry as well as the state ministry. What is alarming is we find individual practitioners or certain companies making substantiated or unsubstantiated claims about the management, treatment and cure of COVID. This is a cause of concern. If you have scientific data to validate your claim, it is accepted by the scientific community. But if you are going to provide unsubstantiated data, inadequate data, small sample sizes, this becomes a cause of concern and ultimately it can tarnish the image of the science. There is a situation of uncertainty. Whom to believe, what to believe is in the minds of everyone. We all know that the causative factor, that is the SARS-CoV-2, it has a zoonotic source closely related to the bat origin SARS-like coronavirus. It also uses the angiotensin converting enzyme 2, that is ACE2 receptor for entry into the cell. It is a single-stranded RNA virus. The person infected by the novel coronavirus are the main source of infection, and direct person-to-person transmission occurs through close contact, mainly through respiratory droplets released when the infected person coughs, sneezes or talks. We have seen that the patients predominantly have a respiratory tract infection. Of the 100 patients infected, 90 to 95% patients remain asymptomatic or mild symptomatic. That is, they would have fever or a mild respiratory tract infection. But close to around 5-6% of patients, they progress to the more severe and systemic disease which is characterized by ARDS, leading to sepsis and septic shock, multi-organ failure, including acute kidney injury and cardiac injury. Initially, there were no autopsies done on the COVID cadavers, but certain institutions in China and Europe started doing autopsies to understand more about the virus and the cause of death. Startingly, it was initially thought that the death was because of respiratory failure. We found out that the autopsy findings have shown that there are certain endometrial damages of the pulmonary vasculature microvascular thrombosis, and hemorrhage linked to extensive alveolar and interstitial inflammation. These are additional learnings which came out after the autopsy findings were done. The clinical features of the patient vary from patient to patient. Fever is one of the predominant signs, but it can be there just for a day or two in some cases, or in some cases it may last for weeks, with as high as almost 103-104 degrees for almost 4 to 5 days. So it can vary from patient to patient. Cough, whether it is dry or productive, is also an important sign. Most of the patients have complained of extreme fatigue and myalgia being infected with COVID-19. Patients develop shortness of breath, and that is called as tachyhypoxia, where though the saturation would be showing around normal, but the patient still feels weakness, and that is the reason we need to have a 5 to 7 minute walk test for patients to understand their actual level of oxygen in the lungs. Rhinorrhea, sore throat is also seen in few of the cases. Many of the patients seen so far have presented with GI symptoms like diarrhea, anorexia, nausea, etc. Hematemesis has also been seen in few of the patients coming to the casualties being attended for COVID-19. One of the predominant clinical features of COVID-19 has been loss of taste and loss of smell, anosmia. Clinicians are now able to confirm the diagnosis of COVID-19 just on the basis of loss of taste and loss of smell, and eventually the patient comes out positive. So as we have seen that the clinical features have been varied across various types of patients. It could be mild, moderate to severe in some cases. And this is where the current management of COVID is very important. Now when we started having patients as early as February and March in India, the initial management I feel was based on reaction. That is, we were exerting a reciprocal force or influence. It was more of symptomatic management. After about 1 month of learning, trials and errors, going through various research papers coming out across the world, and other data evolving around the management of COVID-19, we started to respond. That is, we exhibited action or effect based on learning and wisdom. This was only possible due to the untiring effort and guidance of the members of the State Task Force and the various state committees, including doctors Dr. Avinash Supe, Sanjay Oak, Jai Dudwadia, Dr. Rahul Pandit, Prashant Rusi, Anita Matthew, Dr. Archana Patil, etc. The management of COVID in modern medicine was depending on the various clinical symptoms which were evolved lately. The patients were categorized into mild, moderate and severe. The patients in mild category were further subdivided into 3 groups, Group A, B and C. Group A were those patients who were COVID positive but asymptomatic. That was majority of the population. Group B was COVID positive, symptomatic, that is with URTI, but without comorbidity. And Group C were patients who had mild early infection, COVID positive, symptomatic, but with comorbidity. This predominant class of mild infection was seen in mostly 90 to 95% of cases of COVID positive. Some of these patients who were not treated or detected early went into moderate stage, where pneumonia with no signs of severe disease was seen. But in the extreme cases, we saw cases with severe pneumonia, ARDS, sepsis and septic shock, which comes under the category of severe in the clinical staging system. Management of COVID has taught us many things. We've learned early supportive therapy and monitoring is essential for good prognosis of COVID infection. Management of hypoxemic respiratory failure and ARDS with high flow nasal cannula oxygenation or non-invasive mechanical ventilation, vis-a-vis intubation of the patients which was being done early, in which few patients probably lost their lives. Management of septic shock, the use of low molecular weight heparin and use of steroids has also been started of late. Since it is a new disease, there is no established or known medicine for COVID-19. Hence, the WHO and the other bodies, they gave use of certain known remedies for emergency use under authorization or use of off-label medicines or repurposing of drugs. These terminologies, though were there into the medical sciences, have come out lately for the use of these medicines. Mostly the medicines that have come under use are remdesivir, convalescent plasma therapy, tocilizumab, itolizumab and favipiravir. The use of these therapies is based on limited available evidence. They say as the situation evolves and when more data becomes available, the evidence will be accordingly incorporated and recommendations updated or upgraded. Also pertinent to notice, the use of these drugs is subjected to limited availability in the country as of now, which means that many of these drugs have to be imported from various countries. There have been a lot of scientific papers and reports on the use, misuse, effects, side effects and contraindications of these off-label emergency use authorization and repurposing of drugs. Remdesivir can cause severe renal impairment, is not safe in pregnant or lactating females, nor can be given to children. Convalescent plasma therapy was much touted when it was started for a trial in Delhi. It is contraindicated in pregnant and breastfeeding women, to those persons who are hypersensitive to blood products, critically ill patients, and even those patients who have received immunoglobulin in the last 30 days. The initial understanding of convalescent plasma therapy taught us many of the things. The first trial which was conducted in Delhi, in which 3 patients were given convalescent plasma, one of the patients succumbed due to the further complications. Over the past 1 or 2 months, a lot of learning has come for the use of convalescent plasma. Tocilizumab, which is used for off-label medicines, again cannot be used in patients who have evidence of bacterial infections, underlying bacterial infections, sepsis, multi-organ failure or shock. Itolizumab is approved by DCGI for repurposing use in COVID-19 if tocilizumab is not available. But we need to understand it is a very effective drug for COVID management of the cytokine storm. But it is marked, the red flag is you need to keep up the setup ready for dealing with allergic and anaphylactic reactions. These drugs can be used only in ICU setup where you can manage severe anaphylactic reactions post giving these medicines. Favipiravir is also a broad spectrum antiviral drug, but it can cause diarrhea, decrease of the neutrophil count and increase in the liver functions like SGOT, SGPT. Most important, it can also cause psychiatric symptoms, and as the drug is excreted in the sperm, hence contraception is recommended. There are a lot of adverse events reported in various peer-reviewed and indexed journals after the use of these trial therapies or medicines. ICMR and AIIMS have cautioned on the indiscriminate use of investigational drugs. In spite of all these things, we find that these drugs are being used across all various medical setups for the management of COVID. Trying to understand the Ayurvedic perspective of COVID, I went through a lot of literature related to these type of illnesses in the Ayurvedic text. Acharya Charaka has said, we need not know the understand or know the name of the disease. We can manage the disease based on the clinical symptoms. While going through such type of diseases in the past, Atharva Veda and many of the classical Ayurveda texts have elaborately mentioned, or we have references of disease-causing microorganisms, the causes of epidemics or Janapadodvan as it was called then, the signs and symptoms of fever-type illnesses similar to the current pandemic, and its management and treatment. Based on this literature survey, we know that this knowledge was known to the ancient sages and physicians and was passed on to generations through the classical Ayurveda texts. These are two of the slokas from Atharva Ved. These slokas clearly say that the world is made up of millions of disease-causing microorganisms. Modern medicine now says that we are full, the body and the environment is full of various bacteria, fungus, viruses and various other vectors which can cause diseases. This was mentioned as early as in the Atharva Veda. They were called krumi or bhut in the classical text because the size was so small that they were invisible, and these were disease-causing microorganisms. The concept of pandemic or Janapadodvan is hence mentioned in the Ayurvedic text. The causative factors of pandemic were vitiated air, water and land. They say that during Janapadodvan, a large number of people in a community, though having different constitutions, physical as well as mental constitutions, diet, lifestyle, physical and mental properties, comorbidities, etc., suffered from a similar type of illness. Acharya Sushrut has given the cause of various pandemics. In the slok Prasangat Jatra Sansparsanat Nishwasat Sabhojanat Ekashayyasanaat Chapi Vastra Malyanunlepanat Kusham Jwarasya Shoshasya Netra Abhisandra Evam Aupasargit Rogasya Sankramanti Narandaram. So these are the basic causes which can lead to the transmission of infection from person to person. Acharya Charak says that these disease-causing microorganisms are so small and sukshma that they are not visible to the naked eye. Gadanath Sen Saraswati in the text Siddhanta Nidan has also elaborated on the causes of various pandemics. While going through the classical text and trying to understand about Jwar or fever as it is called in Ayurveda, Vat Shishnik Jwar is almost similar to the symptoms that we see in the current COVID illness. Whether it is Pratishyay, Kirtul, Shitakampa, Angamarda, Kas, Jwar, Avasad, Balahani, Sarasta Rakta Sivan, Anna Marga Akrante. So these are all the signs and symptoms that we see. This slok further says that until and unless the disease is limited to the upper respiratory tract, it is not fatal. But once the disease goes below, it is in the lower respiratory tract and in the lungs, it can cause infection into the lungs and slowly the condition of the patient can be critical. So this is the clarity about which it is written into the classical text. They have also mentioned about the management of pandemic. There are 7 major pillars of management of pandemic. Rasayan Aushadhi Sevan, Sadavrutta Anushthan, Dosha Prashamanam Chikitsa, Chitta Janapad Sevan, Brahmacharya Anushthan, Dharma Anushthan and Hita Bhojan. If we see the things that we are following in the past 3 to 4 months, we have seen that more emphasis is being given on the immunity boosting medicine, adaptation of good lifestyle, moving away from the contaminated places, Kita Janpad Sevan, that is moving patients to quarantine or isolation places for better management of COVID. Brahmacharyanushthan, practicing celibacy. Ayurveda says the immunity of the body depends on the Osh, upper and upper Osh, and Osh is depending on the Sapta Dhatus, and hence practicing celibacy is important. Dharmanushthan is very important as balanced diet. So these are the 7 aspects of management of pandemic given in Ayurveda. Acharya Charak has advised the use of Panchakarma for purification of the body and consumption of immunity boosting medicine. Panchakarma is advised based on the Vyadhi bulb as well as the Rugna bulb and consumption of immunity boosting medicine. These medicines have to be given which have been prepared before the onset of the pandemic. This is observation by AstraZeneca in the stroke of management of COVID-19 of water placement drugs. There are many medicines which have been mentioned in the classical text for the management of water placement drugs or COVID-19, and you can draw a similarity between them. The most important drug is Sansamani Vati or Guruchi Dhanavati. It is the extract of Pinospora cordifolia. I would like to mention the extensive work being done by Dr. Sharajin Dhanuka at Ayurveda Research Center at CEM and Nair, as well as other doyens in the field of modern medicine like Dr. Ashok B.B. Vaidya, Dr. Lele sir, who have been instrumental in using and doing the research on these remedies. There are hundreds of papers available on the public domain regarding the immunity boosting medicine properties of Sansamani Vati or Guruchi Dhanavati, as well as the other properties of Isania Somnicera. A very important drug called Sanjeevani Vati is also mentioned into the Charangar Samhita, which is important for the management of fever. Vasant Malati Ras, a drug mentioned in the Siddha Vaishagya Manimala, is very important for patients with moderate or severe and post-convalescent stage, wherein the severe weakness and fatigue and the weakness associated with COVID can be managed. Charan Paniya, mentioned in Charak Samhita, is also a very important constituent of daily consumption that COVID-19 patients have to adhere to. One of the most important drugs, apart from Sansamani Vati or Guruchi Dhanavati, which has been used extensively by numerous Ayurveda practitioners, is Sudarshan Churna, which is mentioned in the Charangar Samhita. These medicines have been used for the management of COVID-19 patients in Ayurveda settings. So we can see that Ayurvedic texts are replete with references for management and medication of COVID-19 similar illnesses. Based on these understandings, Ayurveda Vyasdeep has submitted an action plan for management of COVID as early as 27th March 2020. This action plan was brought to the notice of the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji during a video conferencing dated 28th March 2020, which was attended by Vaidya Vinay Vilankar and Vaidya Santosh Napurkar. The action plan was drafted in consultation with more than 500 participating Vaidyas across India under the guidance of Vaidya Jayant Devpujari, President, Central Council of Indian Medicine, and it was based on the various stages of the diseases and included the preventive management, symptomatic management, curative as well as immunity boosting medicines and measures to be undertaken for management of COVID. This is the action plan submitted by Ayurveda Vyasdeep to the Ministry of Ayush on 27th of March, which states about the various stages of the disease and the various treatment modalities which can be used. Subsequently, on 8th of April 2020, Ministry of Ayush released the guidelines for Ayurveda practitioners for management of COVID-19. These guidelines were based on the suggestions given by Ayurveda Vyasdeep and various other institutions working for the betterment of Ayurveda. Numerous representations were made to the state government from March 2020 for inclusion of Ayurvedic medicines in the various treatment protocols by Ayurveda Vyasdeep, Maharashtra Council of Indian Medicine and various other organizations, unfortunately without any acknowledgement or any positive response. It had been a struggle in March, April and May to get these powers to be accept the benefit of Ayurveda and make it easily available to all the patients suffering from COVID-19 in the state. We all are aware of the struggle that we all have done to establish Ayurveda in the current time and the stiff resistance that we were facing from various establishments. But eventually, a Ayush task force was constituted at the state level for coordination and making various treatment protocols in the month of May in the state of Maharashtra. Ayurveda Vyasdeep has been very actively involved in the preventive and curative management of patients of COVID-19 extensively in Maharashtra as well as other parts of India. Ayurveda Vyasdeep has managed treated lakhs of patients across various districts. The branches of Ahmednagar, Aurangabad, Sangli, Kolhapur, Satara, Nashik, Thane, Nanded, Navi Mumbai, Mumbai, Dongeli, Kalyan, Nagpur, Chandrapur, Pune, Amravati, Nanded, Karad have carried out extensive activities for the treatment and management of COVID-19. Whether it was done individually without availing any funds from the state government, by the pockets of the Ayurveda practitioners themselves, or whether it was working with local health governments or corporations, the practitioners of Ayurveda Vyasdeep extensively managed COVID-19 cases. Significant is the management of close to 100 patients in Booth Hospital, which is managed by the Salvation Army at Ahmednagar. It's not only asymptomatic or mild symptomatic, but even moderate and severe cases in the stages of the disease have been managed effectively with Ayurveda, and all the treatment and results are documented. The Ministry of Ayush and CCRA has identified 4 promising drugs: Withania Samhita, Enospora cordifolia, Laterza glabra, and Ayush 64, on which further multi-center trials are being conducted on a very large sample size. When we are looking at these type of pandemics or epidemics, the data that is generated, sample size is very, very important. So the sample size for these multi-center trials is in thousands, close to 12,000 to 20,000 subjects are being enrolled for these studies. This will ensure evidence-based validation of the principles of Ayurveda, which is unfortunately lacking today. But apart from these medicines and drugs, there are numerous other herbal, polyherbal and herbomineral compounds with promising results which need to be evaluated. Individual scholars of Ayurveda have done the acute toxicity studies, LD50 studies, safety studies, animal studies for numerous herbal and herbomineral formulations which can be taken up by the ministry for management of COVID-19. Based on all these things, we understand that a lot of emphasis has to be given on clinical research, medicinal plant research, drug standardization, pharmacology research, novel drug delivery systems, new chemical entities, literature research, as well as herbal healthcare research, which is of utmost importance. There are close to around 2,000 plus medicinal plants known in ethnobotany or tribal health research, which can provide a lot of clues and further understanding into the use of new chemical entities that we all are looking for. We also need to work on novel drug delivery systems in Ayurveda so that the drug forms can be given in various dosage forms, which is very, very important. The Ministry of Ayush has issued guidelines for Ayurveda practitioners for management of COVID-19. It is a very important collection of data, and they have also given the consent forms as well as a standardized case record form (CRF) in these guidelines for Ayurveda practitioners. I would appeal to all the practitioners of Ayurveda to go through the guidelines issued by the Ministry of Ayush and try to incorporate the standardized case record form for management and treatment of COVID-19. Integrated Ayush guidelines for public health and healthcare practitioners for COVID-19 have also been issued by the Ministry of Ayush. And guidelines for Ayush clinical studies on COVID-19 This interdisciplinary Ayush research and development dashboard have also been established by the Ministry of Ayush. Those practitioners who are interested or inclined in furthering the cause of research in Ayurveda can go through these guidelines issued by the Ministry of Ayush and CCRA. Guidelines for drug development of Ayurvedic formulations, guidelines for safety, toxicity, evaluation of Ayurvedic formulations, as well as the general guidelines for clinical evaluation of Ayurvedic interventions are very important for clinicians as well as researchers working in the field of Ayurveda. Until and unless we do not evaluate and validate our claims and products based on these guidelines, it would be difficult for the international community or the scientific community to take cognizance of our claims. Also very important is the GCP practice guidelines issued by the Department of Ayush, that is on clinical trials in Ayurveda, Siddha and Unani medicine. I understand that practitioners of Ayurveda have little access to all these data, but now all these things are already available on the various websites of the various ministries and the central council working for Ayurveda. I would appeal to the state government that rather than hindering research that could have potentially expanded treatment for patients, government should seek to empower those healthcare providers to undertake the best practices possible to assist the communities that rely on them. Ayurvedic and other Indian system of medicine options for care should be scaled up and made more accessible to people in India in order to promote the broader definition of health. Due to the problems such as expanding population, the limited number of healthcare professionals that we have, the double burden of communicable and non-communicable diseases, and the growing possibility of epidemics in future, the traditional medicine should be seen as a potential ally of the modern medical system rather than as an enemy. The responsibility lies on our able shoulders. To end with, I would appeal to all the practitioners of Ayurveda to ensure that we focus on few things which will increase the acceptance of Ayurveda. We need to practice evidence-based medicine. The documentation is very crucial. Medical records speak for the treatment. Documentation of patient diagnostic reports, the clinical management, the record of medications provided and the therapies given, and the outcome of medication and therapy. Individual practitioners should also come forward to publish case reports, whether it is individual patients which have been managed effectively or a collective case series. Interventional and observational studies can also be published. This published data will give more credibility to Ayurveda to be used effectively in further management of pandemics, as well as the acceptance of Ayurveda in the various national programs. With this, I would like to once again thank the organizers of MES Ayurveda Mahavidyalaya for inviting me as a speaker to put forward my thoughts on perspective management of COVID-19. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to all. Myself, Dr. Pradeep Ingre, Associate Professor and HOD, Department of Samhita. It gives me an immense pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks for today's lecture. I would like to thank today's speaker, Dr. Kiran Pandit Sir, for graciously accepting our invitation and honored today's session with his inspirational thoughts. I would like to thank our beloved principal, Dr. Shyam Bhakre Sir, for his introductory speech. I would like to thank my colleague, Dr. Shreyas Joshi Sir, for giving introduction of today's speaker. I would like to thank each and every member of MES family. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all the delegates and participants present over here for today's session. I request you to continue this rhythm by attending the session which will be held on 6th and 7th August 2020, and also convey the message to your colleagues. Thank you.